EDGAR CAYCE'S Revelation 1-4. Self-Evaluation. By Kevin Todeschi and Herb Puryear. Then, seek to know what self is lacking, even as given in the first 4 chapters. Are ye cold? Are ye hot? Have ye been negligent of the knowledge that is thine? Are ye stiff-necked? Are ye adulterous in thought, in act, in the very glories that are thine? For the visions, the experiences, the names, the churches, the places, the dragons, the cities, all are but emblems of those forces that may war within the individual in its journey through the material, or from the entering into the material manifestation to the entering into the glory, or the awakening in the spirit, in the interbetween, in the borderland, in the shadow. With this in mind, the Cayce information suggests that one way to explore the Book of Revelation is one of archetypal, or universal symbolism. Through a series of images and pictures, the revelation portrays a sequential process that corresponds to the awakening of the higher self. It depicts the internal struggles that occur within each individual as spiritual development takes place, and the basic lower nature of humankind evolves to its higher spiritual nature. In simplest terms, the revelation is essentially a handbook for the sequential evolution of human consciousness, as individuals reawaken to their connection to the divine. The Cayce approach to the revelation sees the imagery of the text as first and foremost a symbolic look at what occurs within individuals as attunement takes place. Therefore, rather than looking for external events, people, or activities to identify with the symbols, the Cayce readings suggest looking instead for a corresponding process, or structure within the physical body. As one example, Cayce suggested that the 7 candlesticks within the first chapter of the Revelation refer not to the menorah of the Old Testament temple, but rather to the 7 endocrine centers within the physical body. These 7 centers serve as points of contact between the spiritual chakras and the physical body, and are identified with the following glandular systems: the gonads, the cells of Leydig, sometimes referred to as the Leydig, the adrenals, the thymus, the thyroid, the pineal, and the pituitary. With this in mind, the 7 spirits that are before the throne are these points of contact with the divine. These same glands also correspond to the 7 churches. Because of Cayce's ongoing correlation between the body and the symbolism of John's vision, it becomes clear why the readings recommended a comparative study between the Book of Revelation and Gray's Anatomy. The endocrine centers are physical glands that correspond with the spiritual centers, or chakras. They are not identical structures. For example, an individual could have an operation that physically removed the adrenals, and he or she would still possess the spiritual chakra corresponding to that level. The term chakra is actually a Sanskrit word meaning wheel, because of the way in which the energy associated with the spiritual centers appear to spin in place. This becomes especially relevant when it is considered that the faces of the 4 beasts seen by Ezekiel in the Old Testament were identified with 4 wheels. This suggests that Ezekiel witnessed the activity of his own spiritual centers being awakened, stimulating the archetypal imagery associated with the 4 lower centers. Revelation 1-4. Self-Evaluation. In this first sequence, John is in meditation, in the spirit, and turns to see 7 golden candlesticks, which represent the 7 endocrine centers, or chakras. In the midst of these candlesticks, he sees the Son of Man, who tells him to write what he is about to witness. This suggests that the activity of the universal Christ presence is important for John's attunement to continue. This being holds 7 stars in his right hand and places this hand upon John, suggesting that these 7 centers are somehow instrumental in establishing the point of contact between the body and the spirit. John is then told to begin writing letters to the 7 churches of Asia Minor. During the process of meditation, the energy of attunement, that has been called by some the kundalini, begins to rise through the 7 spiritual centers. As this occurs, various images and symbols can come to mind, corresponding to the energy passing through each of the various centers. From Cayce's perspective, it was not by chance that both Ezekiel in the Old Testament and John in the Revelation witnessed the images of a calf, or ox, a man, a lion, and an eagle. In fact, each of these symbols correspond to the 4 lower centers in the body, the gonads, the cells of Leydig, the adrenals, and the thymus, respectively. Therefore, as each individual meditated, the archetypal symbol for each center was awakened and became an accompanying vision, as the energy of the kundalini began to rise and pass through it. John's act of writing a letter to the 7 churches within the first 4 chapters is actually symbolic of the need for all individuals to take a personal assessment of the self's qualities and faults related to each of these motivational centers. In the language of the readings, then, seek to know what self is lacking, even as given in the first 4 chapters. Are ye cold? Are ye hot? Have ye been negligent of the knowledge that is thine? Are ye stiff-necked? Are ye adulterous in thought, in act, in the very glories that are thine? This same idea of the need to undergo a self-evaluation before proceeding with personal attunement is found elsewhere in the New Testament when Jesus cautions about the importance of becoming reconciled with any individual with whom there is a problem before entering into the temple. The Church of Ephesus relates to the gonad center. During this evaluation process, John recognizes that the strength of his own motivational center has been patience. However, a weakness at this level is that this center has left its first love. In Cayce's cosmology, the soul was created to become a companion and co-creator with God. The Bible states, "Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy mind, and with all thy strength, and thou shalt have no other gods before me." Therefore, the act of leaving the first love refers to setting the love of God, the first love, aside in preference for other things. As the energy continues to rise and touches upon the cells of Leydig center, John's letter to the Church of Smyrna symbolizes the evaluation that occurs at this level. The strength of this center is its ability to deal with tribulation, or suffering. The corresponding weakness is associated with insincerity, the blasphemy of them which say they are Jews, and are not. The Church of Pergamos is symbolic of the 3rd center, which is the adrenals. The virtue at this level corresponds to remaining steadfast in faith. The fault is related to the act of casting stumbling blocks before others, for example, creating doubt or confusion in the minds of others. While exploring this segment of John's revelation, the Glad Helpers prayer group inquired about the meaning of Revelation 2 verse 17, and the statement that whoever overcame would receive hidden manna, a white stone, and a new name. Cayce stated each soul has a unique and individual name that he or she was given by God. With this in mind, receiving a new name is actually symbolic of achieving that selfhood that had been intended by the Creator, of fulfilling one's intended mission in life. The hidden manna correlates to the spiritual sustenance and understanding that becomes available to any that remain steadfast in faith. The white stone represents the purity that results for those who undergo hardship and endure. The 4th center is the thymus, and it is represented by the Church of Thyatira. The corresponding strength is charity, or love, and the associated fault is fornication, for example, squandering its energy on selfishness, or less than the highest good, whether it's related to sex for self-gratification, or to doing that which it knows is not for the greatest good. At this level the individual is told that he or she will receive the morning star. The morning star is Venus, which is the planet symbolic of love. This suggests that the capacity for divine love becomes a part of the individual who cultivates the virtue of this center. The thyroid is symbolized by the Church of Sardis, identified with the fifth center. The strength is its ability to remain steadfast in seeking spiritual ideals, not defiled their garments. However, its weakness is imperfection. I have not found thy works perfect. The sixth center is the pineal, and it corresponds to the sixth church, which is Philadelphia. The virtue at this level is an open door that is not dependent upon the activities of any human. In other words, at this level the connection to spirit has remained unaffected by the individual. For that reason, there is not a fault or weakness associated with John's vision at this level. The motivational center has remained true to its purpose. The seventh and final church is Laodicea, corresponding to the pituitary. The weakness is stated as being neither cold nor hot, or lukewarm. The lack of an identified virtue at this level suggests that because of the lukewarm nature of this motivational center, the virtue for John has yet to be activated. The ultimate promise of John's revelation is revealed to all those who overcome the seventh and final level. Revelation 3 verse 21 states, "To him that overcometh will I grant to sit with me in my throne, even as I also overcame, and am set down with my Father in his throne." Repeatedly the Cayce readings suggest that Jesus exemplified the universal Christ consciousness, a pattern of awareness of the soul's true connection to the divine. Each individual was created to ultimately become a companion with the divine in the same manner that was shown by Jesus. With this in mind, in 1938 a 23-year-old sailor was told, "The purpose for the entrance of each soul into a material experience is for the development that it, the soul, may be a companion with the creative forces. For that purpose this entity, this soul, as all others, came into being, to be a companion with the Creator." The assessment that is done at the level of each of the seven centers, symbolized by John's letters to the churches, is essentially an evaluation process, in which the individual is asked to take stock of self's uses of these motivational energies, both negatively and positively. Following this same principle, the late Hugh Lynn Cayce, eldest son of Edgar Cayce, created a personal evaluation chart in his book Faces of Fear to explore some of these same potential uses of the creative energy associated with each of the seven centers. An adaptation of Hugh Lynn's chart is as follows. Positive potential uses of the energies associated with the centers. Center. Potential qualities and strengths. Gonads. Helpful. Protective. Serves others. Meditates. Cells of Leydig. Resolute. Gentle. Balanced male, female energies. Merciful. Adrenals. Seeks peace with others. Persistent. Faithful. Controls temper. Thymus. Loving others before self. Generous. Sympathetic. Friendly. Thyroid. Cooperative. Makes wise choices. Stands by ideals. Open to suggestions. Pineal. Possesses a seeking attitude. Knows self. Reasonable. Aware of the oneness of the divine. Pituitary. Gives God credit. Inspirational. Humble. Encourages others. Negative potential uses of the energies associated with the centers. Center. Potential faults and weaknesses. Gonads. Self-indulgent. Lazy. Abusive. Neglects spiritual things. Cells of Leydig. Doubting. Irresponsible. Imbalance of male-female energies. Inflexible. Adrenals. Overly protective of self. Discouraged. Domineering. angry, thymus, loving self, selfish, self-pity, withdrawn, thyroid, willful, makes irresponsible decisions, does not apply spiritual ideals, indecisive, pineal, narrow-minded, does not know self, unreasonable, unaware or indifferent to oneness, pituitary, self-righteous, indifferent, arrogant, deflates others. After this period of self-evaluation, in which the individual takes account of the faults and virtues of the major motivational potentials within self, the next image, within the Revelation text, is of a throne surrounded by 24 elders and 4 beasts. Remembering that the reading's approach is to associate the symbolism with a corresponding activity or structure within the body, Cayce identified the 24 elders as the 24 cranial nerves within the head, especially as they relate to the 5 senses. According to Gray's Anatomy, there are essentially 12 pairs of nerves, corresponding to the image of 24, that are a part of the peripheral nervous system and are most associated with the activity of the 5 senses: sight, hearing, taste, smell, and touch. In addition to identifying the 4 beasts, calf, man, lion, and eagle, as being associated with the 4 lower centers, gonads, cells of Leydig, adrenals, and thymus, respectively, Cayce stated that the 4 beasts also correspond to the 4 basic natures of humankind. These basic natures, or desires, essentially embody the following motivations: self-sustenance, gonads; self-propagation, cells of Leydig; self-preservation, adrenals; and self-gratification, thymus. The sea of glass that resides next to the 4 beasts can be associated with the stilled emotions during the process of meditation. The symbolism might also indicate the stilled energy of the kundalini. In John's vision, the 4 beasts and the 24 elders all become subservient and begin worshipping the throne of God. This symbolism suggests that the 4 basic self-motivations, as well as the 5 senses, must become subservient, bringing their attention to this process of inner attunement. It is only after this occurs that John's revelation can continue.